relevant, reliable, and researched. This is Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering leading-edge news and information on today's most beneficial products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Welcome back to the program. This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. I'm Sterling Fox, and my partner in crime, Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, insists the Andrews sisters do the best Christmas tunes of all time. So we just had to sneak a little bit of it into the program this week, and good choice, Tony. Good choice. Wanted to talk about insurance. Just before we took the break, I was trying to coerce you in some way into producing a small checklist that, as we approach the end of the calendar year, individual condominium or strata unit owners might want to quickly go through by way of just reassuring themselves that they're on track with their own personal homeowners insurance above and beyond whatever the building or the strata corporation has for the common property.
Well, there's two basic policies which, they overlay, but there are two basic policies that homeowners will have. They're either a resident homeowner that they live in the unit, or they have tenants, so they'll have some sort of landlord policy.
Okay, sure.
Right? So, and in either circumstance, the conditions are basically the same. If you're responsible for the Christmas tree is a great example. We have the Christmas tree caught fire in the unit,
right,
did damage to the building. Look at the bylaws, look at the act. Odds are there's going to be an expectation from the strata you're going to pay the deductible.
Okay.
Right, and the deductible for fire and for damage, for water damage or water escape, there are a variety of deductibles that you could be facing. So the first thing that I always say to everyone who owns a unit is make sure you have a copy of the strata policy every year. And strata corporations certainly need to send out a copy of the policy, because the policies don't renew, or they rarely renew, with the annual general meeting. Even though the annual meeting might be in April and their fiscal year end is February, the policy might renew in August.
Okay.
Right? And so there's always a disconnect between them, and there are often material changes, significant changes between last year's policy and the new policy. Well, if there's any changes whatsoever, you need to make sure those policies are in the hands of the owners and the landlords, so they can adjust their personal insurance to deal with things like those deductibles. The deductible, we had 3 water claims last year, and our water deductible has gone from $5,000 to $25,000. We need to make sure that the owners in this building, the landlords, the tenants, the resident owners, we need to make sure they know about that change in that deductible so they can buy their own insurance to accommodate for those risks.
Is it reasonable to assume that in any kind of insurance arrangement, the policy holder is going to be liable up to a certain extent for some deductible? Or are there full coverage policies in which deductibles are just, they don't exist? No,
there's always going to be a deductible associated with some sort of the claim.
All right.
That will always be a provision of the contract. Insurance is a business, right? The insurance broker is selling a commodity. They are selling a product to you, and at the end of the policy, if that, once the risks of that policy for the year are realized, if there are no claims, then what ends up being sold becomes profit. And so it's very much a commodity that's bought and sold.
Sure.
So insurance packages are bought and resold. So the insurance company's interest is no claims. Right? That's their interest.
Absolutely.
The interest of the consumer is
coverage.
Coverage, right? we have a claim. We want coverage
That's
here.
Right.
And we don't want all these exemptions and restrictions. So, they're two separate interests. So from the consumer's perspective, I need to know clearly what am I getting and what's exempt. And from the individual owner's perspective, you need to know the same thing. What does our policy cover for, and what's exempt? What do we need to carry additional coverage for? And if that water escape deductible is $25,000, I need to make sure I bought some extra insurance, because I could be facing that. I could very likely, if there is I walked away and left my dishwasher running, and the dishwasher itself ends up springing a leak and causing a flood in the building, and there's a significant water escape claim in the building. That's what's going to end up costing me big money. And if my insurance coverage is only for $2,500 for a deductible, I'm going to be expected to make up that extra $22,500 out of my pocket.
Ah, okay.
So the liability is there, and it's no different than if you're a single-family owner, you own a detached house that's not strata titled. Who ends up paying the deductible?
You do.
Right? Same
Sure.
thing, right?
Right.
You know, and if you have so many floods in a 2 or 3 year period of time or so many claims, your insurance is up, your deductibles are up, you're going to pay for them as well. So it's really no difference, but it's a way of apportioning the liability between the parties.
So I guess in terms of a personal checklist for an individual unit owner in a strata outfit is, if the building or the strata policy has changed, I better check my policy to make sure that they're still lined up the way I understand they should be.
Well, and the holes are covered.
Yeah.
You know, I've got these big liabilities here. Are they covered? So I take a copy of the Strata's policy with me when I go to my insurance to renew my policy for my homeowner policy, or I'm a landlord. And don't forget, there's some additional items there as a landlord and homeowner that you have to add. All those betterments that we had done. We put in new kitchen cabinets and granite countertops and hardwood floors, and we upgraded the unit and we did all these changes. Those are not the original fixtures of the Strata. The Strata does not insure those.
Oh,
so
okay.
if there was flood damage to the building, the Strata's insurance does not replace those hardwood floors and those granite countertops. If there was, you know, if there was a destructive fire or something, or the cabinets or the upgrades to the unit, those are the responsibility of you, the owner of the Strata.
So any renovations or improvements that are made to your personal unit, your insurance coverage had better reflect those improvements, because suddenly they're in a different category of coverage.
Well, and if I'm buying into a place, you know, you see these great places on the MLS that have, you know, this fantastic 3-bedroom condo has hardwood floors,
Yeah.
right? Okay, well, there's a trigger for me right there. Who put those hardwood floors in?
Right.
Were they installed by the owner developer? They could have been, or you know, they could have been part of a package that the developer was offering buyers at a time, or they could have been installed at a later date by someone else. If a previous owner installed them, there's still a betterment that I bought. I still have to insure for it.
Okay.
Right? And buyers who are buying pre-owned condos, forget about that. These are not necessarily items that were installed. So make sure you have betterment coverage on your insurance. And the other thing then, if you're a landlord, what you need to have is you need to have a living out cost allowance or loss of revenue cost allowance. Because if there's a fire in the building, the Christmas tree caught fire,
Right.
there's water damage, the tenant has to move out of my unit for 3 months or 6 months.
In order for repairs to take place.
What am I dealing about loss of revenue
Sure.
or out of living expenses,
Right,
right?
right.
Does my policy cover me for those types of things? And don't forget all of your personal property, including your personal property stored in your storage lockers.
Right.
Those things need to be in your policy as well.
If I am a landlord and I have a tenant in my unit, can I compel that tenant occupying my unit to also have a tenant's package?
Well, you can't. The tenant only insures their personal property and their
Exactly.
personal risk, right? So it's like the Strata cannot compel an owner to have insurance for their unit, because the Strata doesn't insure the owner's personal liability or their personal property. The same way the landlord does not insure the tenant's personal property or personal liability. You need to make sure as a landlord you have your policy coverage, because you will be on the hook for things like insurance deductible claims when they come across, because a live Christmas tree was brought in, caused a fire, caused damage. The Strata is going to be coming to you not only for the damages associated with the live Christmas tree and the bylaw violation, but for the insurance deductible. And you may be exposed to, you know, it depends on the bylaws, but you may be exposed to other tenants or owners in the building who've suffered personal losses. They may also be going after you for some of their losses at the same time.
Sure, of course,
right?
because you started it, and the losses they incurred were in no way their fault.
And even more so, there is a argument for a claim if you've started it as a direct result of violating the bylaws by bringing a tree into a building, right?
That was clearly not allowed in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, and we need to take a break, but just before we do, one other liability insurance issue in this time of year when we have slippery sidewalks and all the rest of it, the whole business of keeping the walk clear and who puts the ice and the salt or the de-icer and all that stuff down, and who's liable. Talk to us a little bit about that briefly, if you would.
Again, strata corporations or any property owners in most municipalities have the responsibility for their sidewalks adjacent to their properties,
Okay.
right? So that's the first thing they need to look at. The second thing is their roadways, their driveways, walkways that come up to units, they need to look at the strata plan. If those are designated as common property, it's the responsibility for the strata corporation. Remember, one of the reasons we moved into stratas was I don't want to shovel snow.
That's right.
I don't want to clean gutters. I don't want to have to cut the grass. I don't want to do gardening.
I don't ever want to climb a ladder again as long as I live.
That's the whole point for moving
That's
into
right.
it. So why are you making people shovel their own snow?
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole point of that. Now, in some complexes, a bare land strata, for example, the driveways into the units are probably part of the strata lot. It's the strata lot owner's responsibility to shovel it. The bylaws may say the strata will be responsible for snow removal. They could do that as well. So, but generally, it's common. If it's common property, the strata has to salt it, clean it, de-ice it, remove the snow, maintain and repair it.
All right, Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, will tell you all about their website when we return here on Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call. And there's more still ahead on AM 650.